Welcome back to Kelvin's Faith Unfiltered. This is part 2 in our ongoing series where we tackle 5 common objections to the existence of the God of the Bible. Last time we explored the problem of evil. Today we move into another popular challenge, the claim that there's just no evidence for God. Without further delay, let's head back to Paul, the presuppositionalist, and Scott, the skeptic, as their conversation continues.
You know, I came home yesterday and found out my kids had been on eBay all day. If they don't sell by tomorrow, I'm lowering the price. Anyway, I've been thinking more about our conversation, and I've got to ask, if God exists, why isn't there any evidence for him? Well, that's a big claim. Just so I understand where you're coming from, what kind of evidence are you expecting to see? You know, actual tangible proof. Something we can observe, test, measure. I'm talking about empirical evidence, the kind we'd accept in a courtroom or a lab. So for you, if something can't be tested through the 5 senses, it doesn't count. Right, if we can't see it, measure it, or replicate it, then we have no reason to believe it's real. Do you apply that standard across the board to everything you believe? Of course, if I can't test it or see it for myself, why would I believe it? That's helpful, but have you ever thought about whether anyone can actually live by that standard? Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you're saying we should only believe in things we can observe, test, or measure, right? But what about logic? So how do you test the laws of logic?
If you're not a philosophy major, laws of logic might sound abstract, but you already use them every day. For example, one says a thing can't be both true and false at the same time and in the same way. Another says a thing is what it is. A chair is a chair, not a coffee mug. Another says every statement is either true or false. There's no in between. They're the rules that make reasoning possible. Without them, conversations like this one wouldn't get off the ground.
So how do you test the laws of logic? Well, they've always been consistent. No one's ever seen them fail. Right, but in saying that, you're already assuming they're the same yesterday and will be the same tomorrow. If they suddenly changed, observation wouldn't prove anything. So believing they'll stay that way is more than just observation, it's a commitment. It's a commitment to something universal, unchanging, and not made of matter. You can call them axioms if you want, but that's just a label. If you accept those kinds of realities, you're already stepping beyond your original standard. You're admitting we all live by certain presuppositions that aren't material. They play out in the material world, but we trust them because we assume they're constant. And that's exactly what the writers of the Bible described when they talked about God. They said God's fingerprints were everywhere, in creation itself and in the order of the world, even written on our hearts. So when you use the laws of logic, you're already leaning on something my worldview accounts for, and your starting point doesn't. That's what I mean when I say you're borrowing from my worldview. Well, this is new. I've never heard someone argue for God's existence this way. I'm used to hearing stuff like, the universe had to come from somewhere, or look how perfectly everything is designed. Right, those are the cosmological and teleological arguments. They're not bad, but they do both point to something. They don't prove anything. So here's the challenge. If someone starts with the assumption that God doesn't exist, they're going to run all the evidence through that filter. The origin of the universe? They'll say maybe it's just always been there. The appearance of design, they'll say it's the product of evolution, chance, and a lot of time. Same data, different conclusions, because the starting point shaped the outcome. It's not that I've decided God can't exist, I just haven't seen any solid proof. I'm open, but I'm neutral until the evidence is there. The evidence for God isn't just in 1 or 2 arguments, it's woven into the whole fabric of reality. Once you start with God, you don't just see isolated proofs, you see him everywhere, and he ends up holding everything together. Other philosophies can't handle that weight. Think about it. Your trust in the reliability of your own senses, the belief that your mind has the ability to know truth, your confidence that you're not living in a dream or plugged into some simulation. All of those assumptions or beliefs are held up in a worldview with a God of the Bible. And here's the flip side. Start pulling on those threads and promoting a worldview that can account for those assumptions. And don't get me wrong, many philosophers have tried. They've caused you to question whether your senses are trustworthy, and they have caused you to ask if you can even be sure you're having this conversation. They have questioned if your mind is even able to know truth, or even if truth exists. What that leads to is that every conclusion you reach becomes suspect. Yeah, and half of them were nuts, sitting around wondering if the table in front of them even existed. Those guys were off the deep end. But their ideas didn't stay locked in ivory towers. Over time, those crazy thoughts filtered into culture, through art, media, education, until people started doubting basic things they once took for granted. And when that skepticism takes root, it doesn't stop with furniture. It moves to morality, meaning, and even whether truth itself exists. Push far enough down that road, and you land in what philosophers call global skepticism, a place where you can't actually know anything for sure. That's not just bleak, it's unlivable. And yet the Christian worldview doesn't just avoid that pit, it explains why we can know anything at all. I think I get what you're driving at. Is this where you tie it all back to my original demand? You got it. When you asked for evidence, you assumed you were looking at it neutrally. But I think I've shown you already ruled God out by demanding only empirical evidence. You're asking an immaterial, unchanging universal to be proven by material tests. You'll never get to him that way. The irony is you already depend on things you can't prove empirically, like the laws of logic. Your need for empirical proof rules out God, but then you use ideas like the laws of logic, which are a part of the God of the Bible's worldview, and which your worldview can't account for, to argue against, you guessed it, God. Here's the thing. I start with God, not because I can empirically prove him, but because his existence allows for reality of things that aren't empirical, like the laws of logic, which make our conversation possible in the first place. We can only debate God because his existence holds the rationality of debate together. So when you ask for evidence, the real question isn't whether there's evidence, it's whether your starting point will allow you to recognize it when it's right in front of you. I've got to think about this. I'm sure I missed something in my line of argument. I mean, if God exists, I don't get why he doesn't just show up here and talk to us. I think he is. You have to ask yourself, are you listening? Hey, baby, what's up?
Let's go eat. I'm hungry.
All right, let's go. We can talk about this later.
Saved by the Bella, this conversation isn't over, but some of the walls that were up are starting to come down. Scott's going to have to wrestle with these things. Stay tuned for more content as we continue examining the arguments against the existence of the God of the Bible. Thanks for watching. If you felt this video was helpful, please like and subscribe. And also, don't forget to visit kelvinsfaithandfilter.com for more unfiltered content. And follow us on Facebook to stay up to date with our content releases. Until next time, stay shaped by reason, guided by faith, and oh yeah, take it easy.
They have questions. I'm gonna get this one. Push far enough and down. Push far enough and down. That's. Alright, I got this. Oh, yeah. Oh.